Hi everyone, I'm Rabina.
And I'm Layla.
Welcome back to our channel, Elementary My Dear,
where we make nutrition science easy for you to digest.
Today we answer some more of Reddit's nutrition questions.
Be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss one of our videos. When we're not scrolling through TikTok, you might also find us on Reddit. And I personally love going through the r/nutrition Reddit, all the r/supplements, r/gain it, r/lose it. I find them really interesting because you get to hear from the people. What are the people thinking about when it comes to nutrition?
People certainly have very interesting questions. Some questions I've never thought about before. They definitely stimulate my intellectual curiosity. Shall we get to our first question?
Let's do it. Hot_advance3592. 1 week ago they posted it.
Hot advance. Okay.
Oh, I don't know. They sound a little spicy. I don't know.
So this person asked, doesn't the amount of food consumed massively influence the positive or negative health effects of a food? I feel like there's a lot of articles that say XYZ food has been shown to increase or decrease XYZ in the body. However, in the case of ginger, isn't the amount consumed of ginger so small that it won't have much of an impact on your body at all? Or is the amount present in ginger the right amount to have impact on your body? I heard in the case of cocoa, the studies were done with concentrated flavonoids, an amount that would require consuming an unrealistically large amount of cocoa, by which point there would be negative impacts from other nutrients in the material. Blah, blah, blah. What is your experience with this topic? I love this question, and I think this question really hits the nail on the head on exactly the nuance that's missing and a lot of the nutrition and wellness advice that's kind of thrown at people on social media.
Absolutely. And I think the examples that the Redditor used with, ginger or especially cocoa, because you always hear chocolate, blah, 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 and it's eating chocolate. Well, it's the same as, going to the gym or whatever, when they're actually looking at cocoa and a specific flavonoid within it. And they're looking at one certain marker of going to the gym, but then broadly it's eat more cocoa is a recommendation, or eat more chocolate. But we don't really get to, what are we actually basing this off of?
This person is absolutely right. The amount matters, but also the form that it comes in, level of exposure, the duration of exposure, all of these things matter. But let's answer the amount part first.
The saying, the dose makes the poison, I would argue it also goes the other way. The dose makes the medicine. This writer talks about ginger specifically, and ginger has a whole host of things that it's been researched for. Probably one of the most well-researched is nausea.
Ginger has been used as an anti-nausea treatment in a lot of traditional contexts, and there has been quite a bit of research on it. Specifically in pregnant women, there's research that suggests that any dosage between 600 milligrams and 2,500 milligrams is effective at combating nausea. I actually looked up the ginger gravol medication because I get motion sick a lot, but I have found that the ginger gravol doesn't work for me. Each pill has 20 milligrams of ginger extract, which is equivalent to 340 milligrams of dried ginger root. And the dosage does tell you to take 2 every few hours. So it does end up being over 600 milligrams. So it is within that range. Although, I don't know, it still doesn't work for me. So
I will say the studies in that had very different sources as well. Some of them were ginger extracts and some of them were other sources. And the authors didn't really elucidate it too much more than at the beginning. So it was hard to see, was there effect of the type on nausea. Generally, though, a large range of doses of ginger have an effect on nausea specifically. However, when we're looking at something that's a little bit more complex from a physiological standpoint, like systemic inflammation, we have to look at the doses once again, because just because a certain dose will work for nausea doesn't necessarily mean that it would work for inflammation.
A meta-analysis that actually analyzed the effects of ginger supplementation on markers of inflammation found that it takes at least 2,000 milligrams of daily supplementation to reduce markers of 2 inflammatory markers, C-reactive protein and tumor necrosis factor alpha. This is in comparison to lower doses. So just like the Redditor had identified, the dosage does in fact matter.
When we talked about nausea, that was specifically pregnant women. Inflammation, that was a review of a bunch of different studies, but if we looked specifically in a population that maybe had an inflammatory condition like arthritis, maybe that dose would need to be higher, or maybe even lower, we'd see improvements. So this is where science kind of gets a little bit murky because there are just so many little factors at play.
I think on social media, when someone's just take this ginger supplement because you will get rid of all of your inflammation, it's interesting because I think a lot of that messaging, again, just misses a little bit of nuance. I think what often happens is there might be a nugget of truth in there that just gets blown way out of proportion. They might even put like references and sources on there and it seems very compelling, but perhaps it may not actually apply to you or be beneficial to you in your situation and the dosage that they're talking about.
This redditor also brought up cocoa, which I know is a very popular compound for study, very popular on social media for being like, oh, have more cocoa, it's gonna solve all your problems. Sometimes people take that as far as have more chocolate and that's gonna solve all your problems, which maybe a little bit murkier. One of the things that cocoa is looked at the most is for endothelial function, which can have an impact on your cardiovascular health over the long term. There's been quite a few different meta-analyses or studies of all the studies that have been done on this, and it actually does show that generally cocoa flavonoids doses about 750 milligrams tend to be optimal, and then after which we see a slight decrease in terms of improvement, and then a greater improvement at even higher doses in excess of 1200 milligrams. It just goes to show how hard it can be to really pinpoint what those doses that are beneficial actually are. It's very interesting because where the point at which you see the decrease is actually where there's the most amount of evidence there. So it's actually possible that some of this data that we get about doses can be influenced by the doses that the studies choose to use. Scientists are really good at, looking at the mechanisms and thinking about what previous research has been done when they're coming up with doses. But again, when we're talking about amounts, we're kind of limited to what is used in studies.
I think that really highlights the fact too that when it comes to nutrients and things like that, it's not that more is automatically better, which I think is often kind of the messaging that's out there. Like if something is good, well, you might as well get it in the most concentrated source and take this supplement and that shake and this tea and whatever, take in all of this stuff as if the more the better, and that's just not inherently true, and it's typically not true for most things that we consume.
With something like cocoa, where most people get cocoa is from something like chocolate, and the redditor brought up a point is, to get a certain amount of dose that would be beneficial, you might be encountering harmful effects of other nutrients. And so if you're getting your cocoa from chocolate and you're eating, I'm not sure how much chocolate you would need to get 750 milligrams of cocoa flavonoids, but 6 Cadbury Dairy Milk bars a day, when you then look at the effects of, sugar on endothelial function and, some of the saturated fats that are in there on endothelial function, you might actually find that any benefit you would have seen is overshot by those other factors that are there.
Which I think brings us to another point where it's not just the amount, but also the form or the source or the food matrix that you're getting the specific compound from. A lot of these research studies are looking at very specific compounds that are extracted from a food source, and the actual compound amount might be thousands of milligrams or a certain amount that, again, if you were to actually get that compound from food, you would need to consume such a large amount of that food that the possible negative side effects or the negative effects would outweigh any positive effect. We see this in turmeric, where a lot of the research is done specifically on curcumin, which is a compound in turmeric. And curcumin has been identified as an anti-inflammatory compound. Curcumin actually only makes up a very small percentage of turmeric, less than 10% by weight. So it's unclear, whether consuming turmeric in the form of lattes or in your food necessarily would have the same impact. However, it is interesting because observational studies looking at populations that eat turmeric on a regular basis, say in the form of curries, do seem to show that it seems to have a positive impact on cognitive health. However, I think a lot of the populations that eat that type of food, their environmental context, the other dietary components, and other lifestyle variables are also very different. So who knows what's actually happening there.
Similarly, these studies are so controlled, and it's someone taking a supplement of an extract of something, but people don't eat that way. People eat whole foods. And we see two different sides to this, where either you're eating the food and the whole food matrix kind of completely axes any benefit that would exist from that compound, but alternatively, sometimes the whole food matrix is greater than the sum of its parts. And because it's so complicated to study a whole food matrix and how it comes together, we're kind of left with these dose response studies to very specific extracts of very niche foods. And so it does kind of leave us a few question marks.
So ultimately, the redditor is absolutely correct. The dose absolutely matters, and a lot of the messaging that's out there could be misleading depending on what they're actually promoting and what information that they're actually putting out there. But not only does the actual dose of the specific compound matter, it's also the whole food matrix that you're getting the compound from. And exactly as you said with the example of cocoa, it's possible that the whole food matrix could either be contributing to the benefit or possibly even causing a negative side effect that you wouldn't want, depending on, again, what the dosage is. And not only does the food matrix matter, ultimately it's going to come down to what your whole diet looks like. So you could be eating the greatest superfood on the planet at the optimal dose every single day, but if the other aspects of your diet and your other aspects of your lifestyle and your environment are not conducive to health, it's unclear how much of a benefit that one superfood that you're having every single day is actually going to have. On to the next. Now we're hearing from Tom Rogers 98.
Welcome, Tom. Thank you for your question that you posted to r/gainit, which is a subreddit for people who are trying to gain weight.
Does it piss everyone else off as much as me that according to any media, healthy is anything low calorie rather than the nutrition it contains? I don't know if it pisses me off. I do see it as a problem, and that's a very valid concern. I think it's true that pretty much all marketing in general, like at the grocery store, anything that's promoted, it does seem like there's a false equivalency there where lower calorie or lower sugar or fat free or whatever free is somehow automatically the healthier alternative. You can throw organic in there, natural.
I'm going to come out a little harder than you, Rabina. I'm going to say it pisses me off. I don't know. I think this may be rooted in kind of diet culture and the assumption that everyone wants to lose weight all the time, and that, automatically by losing weight, you are becoming healthier, which isn't necessarily true depending on the means that people go about it. But yeah, oftentimes
low calorie equals health.
And that is simply just not true. And I can think of 100,000 different examples walking through the grocery store, as you said, low fat, lower calorie. And it's yeah, but that's still not a healthy food. Labeling foods as healthy and not has its pros and cons to it. But I think there are certain things where they're advertising it as it's healthy, in terms of physiologically healthy. And there's just no argument to be made other than the fact that it has slightly fewer calories. I think that this idea also not only permeates media or advertising, I also think it's really prevalent in the medical sphere as well, also just society in general. A lot of the times, even medical professionals might tell you to choose the lower calorie option because it's healthier, when we really have to look at a food as a whole, because there's a lot more than just energy in foods. There's kind of a metaphor that people like to use is food is your fuel, you're like a car or whatever, so you gotta fuel yourself right. But I think people neglect the fact that food is not just your fuel. Food is also the alloy metals that go into building the car. Food is also this metaphor is done, so I'm just gonna... Food also helps your body's system processes. So the nutrients that are in food don't just give you energy, they also give your body the little factors it needs to do the things to keep you thinking, to keep you moving, to keep you digesting, to keep you alive, independent of giving you a source of energy. Food also provides the backbone of everything in your body. It's the structure of everything in your body. Healthy foods provide the energy conducive to good energy balance, but they are also conducive to making sure that all the processes in your bodies are going smoothly, things are working well, your gears are going well. I'm trying to get back in this car metaphor, but it's not working.
That goes beyond just the total energy content, but also goes into the specific macronutrients and micronutrients that make up the food, which often these products don't really take into consideration. I think the assumption is that people are either actively trying to lose weight or at the very least trying to not gain weight, which in and of itself is maybe a flawed way of thinking, although it's probably maybe does represent a good chunk of the population. For some people, perhaps choosing a less energy dense option may be the healthier choice for that one person. But in a lot of cases, like you said, there are a lot more variables that go into what determines whether something is healthy. And how are we even defining health in this context, right? Do you mean purely physiologically? Do you mean mentally? Do you mean socially? Do you mean psychologically? I think there's a lot of different ways to define health for each individual person. And even for an individual person, day to day, it could change. Eating event to eating event, it could change. For someone that, if the nature of their work is that they're not going to be able to eat for the next 7 hours, maybe choosing the higher calorie option is the healthier choice for them in that moment.
We have this fixation on low calorie for the purposes of losing weight or not trying to gain weight. And sometimes we kind of almost exchange that for, what's going to keep us like satiated and full. A lot of times it's not the lowest calorie option that's going to keep you satiated and full if you are trying to lose weight or if your goal is to not gain any weight. Not that that is everyone's goal. When these companies are putting like low calorie on their food or seeing choose a low calorie option, if the goal and like your definition of health is losing weight, that's not even always the best way to go anyway.
I actually really love this question, and it kind of ties into the first question that we talked about as well, which is ultimately there's no single part of a food that's going to make or break your health. So whether it's the calorie content, whether it's a specific compound, we have to take into consideration not only the whole food matrix, but also the context of the whole food matrix in your overall diet to determine how it's going to impact your overall health. Which is why ultimately most research suggests that the best thing that you can do is have a wide and varied diet that prioritizes minimally processed foods.
Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you never miss one of our videos. And if you have a question for us, leave it down in the comments. Follow us on our Instagram and our TikTok.
Thank you for watching.
Bye. I also didn't sound like the end of that.